we got a chance to speak to some of the minds behind the brand new adaptation of Shogun. Check out our conversation with co-creators Justin Marks and Rachel Kondo and executive producer Michaela Clavell. I have had this copy of Shogun.
Oh my, look
from
at
the
that.
time I think I read it first when I was 12 or 13 and far too young to be reading this sort of thing.
Yes.
I had raided my parents' nightstand because that's where I would find all the books. And I was wondering, obviously, this is a question for Justin and Rachel, not for you, Michaela, but what was your first encounter with Clavell and his work?
I think it was exactly what you're describing, which is we always say it was the book for us as a generation. It was the book on everyone's parents' nightstand.
Right.
You know, it very much occupied that very large silhouette in collective memory. And I think that we knew when we started this process that we had to begin this process with an awareness of what that silhouette was and an acknowledgement of it. That, you know, in the time when the book came out and the time when the original miniseries came out, Japan for American audiences was a very novel concept. And we didn't have sushi restaurants on every corner in the United States at that time. Now we do. And so if we were going to tell the story again, we had to search for something that would speak to audiences today. And fortunately, it wasn't hard to find that, because once you read the book, you realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more than, you know, what I think over the last 40, 50 years, we would think of as sort of these more dated silhouettes and shapes. Like when the book itself is remarkably modern and has so many things to say to a modern audience, as any good timeless work of literature should. And so it was really refreshing to you know, finally get to read it as grown-ups and to find that the only problem had been all those decades we missed it in our lives.
We were a little older than 12, but I too came to the book not having read it, and like anything, you come to it with your own lens, your own thoughts and expectations. And I thought to myself, knowing that FX had wanted it to become a television series and had submitted it to Justin for consideration, I thought, oh, wow, you know, as a short storyteller or writer, this is great for me, right? Great for me to get involved because I'm a person of Japanese heritage. But then, you know, you just tear into the book, and 3 weeks later, 8 hours a day, you know, studying it, you realize that the book just has so much to say that you immediately start getting yourself out of the way, you know, and you start saying, all right, I need to listen to what this book is trying to say. And like Justin said, the timelessness actually jumps out at you, and you feel the responsibility.
So I did this thing before watching the 10 episodes that they sent us, and I rewatched the original, which I had forgotten about, and Toshiro Mifune and Orson Welles, like, oh, insanity. Anyway, I rewatched the original, I reread the book, and I think this is like the 5th time I'm reading it.
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
And I had a question for all three of you, and you kind of preempted it, Justin. I had forgotten how progressive the book actually was.
Yeah.
And Michaela, I was wondering if you could speak to that. And actually, all of your dad's work actually is remarkably progressive, given the time, given the perspective.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak to that. And also, Justin and Rachel, I was wondering if you could speak to excavating that, because other people seem to have missed it.
Interesting. That's an interesting point. Well, I think his intelligence seeps through every word, right? That was who he was. And he was, I think, intrigued by different ways of living, different spiritual cultures. And he was a man of great curiosity. And I think that curiosity is what leads you down through all these journeys, like it does in a way with Blackthorn. He's curious about the culture. He wants to know. That's why we see the Japanese culture through his eyes, because he's really should be dead. but his curiosity, we always felt,
Right.
kept him alive
Yep.
and kept him moving forward and kept him going to the next step. And I think that that was a characteristic my father had in spades. I mean, he should have been dead long before he wrote a word of a book, because that was his experience, but his curiosity just kept him alive and he kept on going. And so I think that was something you mentioned in the beginning that intrigued you, was the curiosity
That was
and FX.
yeah, that was the original kernel of our understanding of not just the purpose of the book, but Blackthorn as a character. It was our initial way into this. It was something, yeah, that you had told me, you had said to John Landgraf
Mhm.
earlier in this process of how was it that he managed to stay alive, not
Very
through,
severe
yeah,
circumstances.
not through the harsh circumstances of his youth,
Mhm.
but also just, to forge an incredibly successful career over the decades. And you said that the thing about him is that he was more curious than anyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, I think that's what.
And that spirit is, I think, something that for us, in terms of your question about excavation, that's really all we tried to do. I know what you mean when it comes to something that people seem to have missed when it comes to the understanding of this book. Some of that may be unfair because it was, adaptations or even stories more ripped off from Shogun have come in the media over the last 40, 50 years that take a certain shape, whatever, call it what you will, a stranger in a strange land, or this white savior shape, any of these things. Shogun, as maybe casually speaking, a kind of the original archetype of it, at least in our modern culture, to me, upon inspecting it, is really none of those things. It's really this profound and generous meditation on belonging and not belonging to another culture. And it's a story about listening and quieting, and trying to absorb. And I think we took that message and tried to apply it on every level of how we did this production. Our collaboration with our Japanese producers, advisors, partners, cast in this process, in terms of trying to bring a level of authenticity to it that I think, were this kind of research and communication available to James Clavell today, this is exactly what I would think he would want to
Yes.
employ as well, because it's all in service of transporting the audience to, because let's make no mistake, the reason why we come back to Shogun is because it's just a great story. It's
Right.
just a great story. You
And you
can't
would
stop
go,
turning
you read it
pages.
5 times.
I think you get an award of some
Yeah,
kind.
that's crazy.
Oh, I love the book so much. And just, I think I'm allowed one more question, but very quickly, then the complexity of what you guys did with having 3 POVs almost, right? It was Toranaga, Blackthorn, and Mariko. Was that always what you had in mind when you set out to adapt this? Because it made for a really cool watch.
And again, that's very true to the way my father wrote.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
He
The book.
wrote
Yeah.
complete people. In a way, his curiosity led him to decipher people without moral judgment, but to get to the bottom of them, to pull them apart, to find out what made them tick, what made them love, what made them happy, and whatever. And that's exactly what you're saying they did. They gave complete characters without that moral judgment. You make the judgment as the audience, So yeah, that's part of
And
it.
even the more minor characters, Fuji,
Mm.
Omi,
Yeah.
all these characters
Yes.
have very, very full, complete experiences that we pulled from the book. So as you're talking, I was thinking to myself, wait, did we do anything? Because it just it seems like we just
you
got
made
out
it
of the
your own.
way and
No,
said,
no.
to our Japanese collaborators, with this story James Clavell brought to the world, like, go, right? And that's probably what set us apart from other attempts, is simply that we tried hard to get out of the way. I don't know. That's my new take
That's-
now.
Yeah, it was a very, I mean, relative to some adaptations that I've been part of, a very easy curation, because the source material was so strong. We took the lead from the book and told the story of these 3 characters and just went where our curiosity led us.
But they made it their own. They took my
Fantastic.
father's work, my beautiful father's work, but you also made it your own. So it's straddling a very razor thin edge by doing that, but you did it. And that's a rare thing.
You can watch Shogun when it premieres on Disney Plus Hotstar February 27th. Let us know what you think of the show, sound off in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.